Fast forward to 289. Welcome back. I'm Larry. Tonight we're going to be working on my 351 Cleveland again. Alright, so this is what we're going to be doing tonight. We're going to be installing piston rings. But first we have to go through, I always double check mine. And I always use Hastings rings. This is what I'm using here. They're 30 over pistons, or 4 30 over, I should say. And there's the information if you need it. I'm using steel moly. So I go through, I went ahead and started installing on these, but we got to check the ring gap. I always check my ring gap just to make sure they're good. And I always lay my stuff out nice and neat so you can see how they used to have I like their old way better, honestly. They had a long box and it would be labeled and all that. But anyway, now they got them in these paper wrappers that tell you which ring land they go in, which ring groove, and the rings. So I just laid them out on the paper that they go to, keep everything nice and neat. So these are your compression rings, obviously, then oiling rings. So, and install tool and my filler gauge. So we're gonna check the ring gap, and I've already checked all of these on this for the second groove, and all of these ranged between 18 thousandths and 17 or 18 thousandths was all. I think it was 2 17s and the rest were 18. There might have been 119 in there, but they were plenty good enough because the spec were a Cleveland, or for really pretty much all 4 inches with a 4-inch, or in this case, a 430 over bore, but the rings are for 30 over pistons, so it's still the same gap. So it'd be between 10 to 20 thousandths. If we come to my book here, you can see here 72, 79, all engines. Top compression is 10 to 20 thousandths. Bottom compression, which is your second groove, is 10 to 20 thousandths. So what I do is because when you put the ring in here, you want to make sure you get the ring nice and flat. So a good little tip is to put one of your rings, leave the top ring out and put the second ring in on your piston. And then install the ring in the block, and you can use the piston to help set the ring even. Okay, so since this is our second compression ring, it's actually marked top on here. We gotta make sure this is facing up toward the top of the engine. So we're gonna install our ring. Like so. Then we grab our piston with our second ring already installed. And we're just going to push it down until it's flat. And this will give you a nice stop to make the ring even all the way around so you can measure the gap. These are the 3 that I was using to check it. So I'm going to check my 18 first just because it's what most of them were. And it's kind of tight, so I think it's going to be a 17. Yep, 17 slides right in. So this one's 17 thousandths ring gap, which is plenty because, again, our spec is 10 to 20, so we're perfect. We're on the higher side, and I like to be on the higher side of my ring gap. I don't want it too tight because you could break a piston. If it's a little bit bigger of a gap, then you're better off, so then you don't have to worry about it expanding too much. 18 slides in there, it's just really snug. So, but 18 does fit, it's just really tight. So 17, 18, you know. We're gonna call it 17 thousandths. So now that I know all my second ring groove gaps are good, I'm gonna go through and repeat the same process for the top compressor ring. You don't have to do it to your oiling rings because they're so thin anyway. You can if you want to just double check, but it's not necessary with those. But with the compressor rings is a very important detail to check your ring gap. This is your top ring, this is the second ring. So you can see on the second ring, it actually has top etched into the ring. Whereas if you look at the top ring, there is no markings of any kind. And it'll always be right here by the ring gap if they have any. But there's none on this side, and there's none on this side. And that means that this ring can go on in any direction. It doesn't matter which way it flips. And you only have to look on your top and second ring for compression rings on that. On your expander ring, however, so where it comes apart, or where it meets at, I should say, they say install it with the opening is supposed to be facing to the top of the piston, and they tell you that in the instructions. This is why it's important to always check your instructions. But right here you can see it says there's your expander ring, 2mm oil ring installed with gap towards top of piston. So like I said, that would be this right here. As far as the other oil rings that go above and below the expander, it does not matter. So with these rings, because they're so thin, there is no top or bottom. There's no right or wrong way to install them. Did the rest of them. I saved the last two so we can go and put these last two pistons together. Now, you don't have to do this. It's just I'm overly picky with how I do my things. So you can see I laid this out just like it would be in the engine. So this is cylinder one. Like if you're looking at the front of the engine, this is the front. That's the back. This would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the way you count forward cylinders, and that's just the way I like to lay mine out. And I do mine in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just because it don't really matter what order you do them in. That's just the way I do it. So we're gonna grab our piston, install our expander, and once again I look for the opening. Okay, gotta flip it around. Put the point. Put the point at the top. You always want to install this one first, because if you look on here, you have like these little indentions or these little teeth, and that's where those other rings sit up against that. And grab one of our Olin rings. Make sure you only have one. They're so thin, sometimes they'll get stuck together. Make sure you like rub them against your fingers and make sure you only have one. And also after I install my expander, there's the opening. I'll give it a little bit of a turn, and then I'll put the ring on the bottom side first, all the way around. Be careful not to pull too hard on these. These will bend. And so now just like that, and I give it another little turn and install the other one. On the top of the expander. Make sure they move freely. Now we can go to the second one. And again, this one does have top. So you gotta look for the top marked on there. Sometimes it'll be a dot, and sometimes it'll be etched in like this one says top. So make sure that's facing to the top of the piston. And these are ring install pliers. Highly recommend getting them because you can break these rings, so you want to be very careful. So again, top facing up. I put it up here, and I use my thumb to kind of put tension against the pliers as I squeeze it open, just big enough to get the ring to go over. And when it comes to these, I always install the opening on the second ring, even with the notch facing in the piston, because this notch tells you this goes to the front of the engine, and I just space it in front of that one. Again, this one has no dot, no top, no etching, no nothing, so it doesn't matter which way it goes. If you look, it's just a square ring. There's no bevel or anything to it. Whereas the second groove, or the second ring, I mean, does have a bevel. If you look at it in there, I don't know how well you can see it, but there is a bevel on that ring. There's no such thing as this, just a square ring, so it goes either way. Good thing about these pliers, it'll hold it for you until you get ready to squeeze it too. Just like so. Another little turn. And since I put the second ring gap even with the notch in the piston, I'll take this one and spin it 180 degrees where the opening is on the opposite side of that notch. And that one's done. Make sure everything moves freely, and that one's good to go. And one thing I did forget to show is, even though I highly recommend the pliers, you can install these without. Put one end in, and then flex the top up like so, and just kind of spin it around. like that, and they are installed. You can do them that way for both of them. You got to be a little more careful on the second one because it's further to twist it, but you be very careful. These will break, but you can do it that way as well. All right, that's all 8 pistons. Everything moves freely, and that's a done deal. All right, so we got those piston rings installed, and now we're one step closer to finally getting this thing assembled and buttoned on up. So stay tuned for the next video when we install the pistons in the block. That's going to be fun. So if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them in the drop box down below. Until next time, I'll see you on the next one. Take care.